And we stay in Canada with Robert Rose Publishing. It was also founded in 1995, and everybody knows Robert Rose Publishing. It's one of the leading publishers and best-selling publishers in North America, with a very strong interest in health. So thank you so much, Bob Dees, legendary publisher, to be with us today.
I'm sorry, I'm smiling. I'm not sure that I'm legendary, but thank you very much. I'm going to try and keep this short to get us a little bit more back on schedule. I'm not talking about Robert Rose because we've got, I think it's 5 books nominated, and I love all of my books, but they're out on a table. You can take a look. What I did want to do is celebrate creativity. This is an incredible event, and I've been to many of them. And it's an opportunity to share ideas. It's an opportunity to listen to people who have more energy and creativity than I probably have in a year. They devote themselves frequently on their own to a cause or an idea. They look into that idea in immense depth because they feel they can make a difference. And I think too often we forget that we actually can make a difference with the books that we publish, that we're involved with. But anybody who self-publishes, it is a staggering amount of work. And I am astonished, somewhat embarrassed maybe, often those self-published books are better than the books that we do because we're preparing books for commercial audiences and price becomes a factor. And these books, so many of them are so beautiful that it's unbelievable. So I want to acknowledge that. I want to thank all of the Gourmand people for bringing us together because I think that's incredibly important and valuable. But I also want just to say yet again, if I look around the world, what I see is a diminishment of interest in creativity, a diminishment of inquisitiveness. There no longer is that dedication in many countries, and I hate to say it, the country to the south of Canada, is destroying that sense of search for truth, search for ideas, search for new solutions. I'll cut the politics there, but I wanted to also touch on 2 other things. One is design. I happened to be involved at the beginning of the Dummies books with the chief dummy. And at that time, for those of you old enough to remember, that was about 30 years ago. And almost all computers were run by DOS, which made Bill Gates rich, but nobody could understand it. You couldn't figure out how to run a PC. And John Kilcullen came up with this idea of creating a book for dummies that would enable them to use a personal computer. And some of it was language, but most of it was design. It was breaking up text into small sections, using all sorts of boxes in a design we still use in our health books, the same design. It is a nightmare to get it to work, to fit on a page through 250 pages. But I can tell you from having sold hundreds of thousands of our health books, it is unbelievable how design can work and how that design worked to really change how people worked with computers. They now have over 2,000 books in print. They've sold 250 million books, so it obviously worked, but it was unique. And I think that's another element of talking about the content that is discussed here, is it's unique. Many of these, I had dinner with Len a couple nights ago, and I said to him, I was surprised he found a publisher, because it is such a small topic, and we have a very homogenized view of the world in commercial publishing now, which I think is sad. And a lot of that has come out of the pandemic, and I'm sure it will come back. But it's sad that we're depressing creativity. And I think we all need to really recognize how important it is to remember that. And because I know that nobody's listening to me, I can say, some days I think that the Robert Rose publishing program isn't half as creative as it was before the pandemic. And, you know, it's a business. We have to respond to practical problems within the various industries. But nobody wants to take a risk today. And while I can say I understand that, because I'm not keen on risk, it's important for us to each push ourselves. Now, I also have something which is a negative, and I want all of you to remember the respect that I have for self-published books. And many of our books are ones which were originally self-published, and we acquired rights for them. There is a phenomenon now through Amazon.com in which in the United States, there's no legal protection for a book title, so anybody can use the same book title. There are people who use software to build books that are full of, I was going to say junk, but to be honest with you, it's crap. I mean, it's just terrible material. And they'll put together a book, and this is, the Fondue Bible is our book. It's now in its second edition, has sold about 100,000 copies, and it's the best selling book on fondue on Amazon.com. At one point, a year ago, there were 5 other fondue Bibles, one of which, I didn't buy them, but one of which had no fondue recipes. But it was nevertheless the Fondue Bible. They all take away from sales for a real book that somebody worked very hard on to create the recipes, we edited, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also, it destroys consumer faith in books. It destroys the faith, all of you, creating content. It diminishes the value of that content. And Amazon, I hope they're not listening, they're our biggest customer, but they don't care. It's just a process for making money. And in our case, we're lucky. We have some of our best-selling book is with a brand, so it has a trademark in the title. And it's almost a full-time job 6 months out of the year to find the people knocking off the title. And fortunately, Amazon, our partners in those books, are usually great big companies who won't blink an eye to sue Amazon, so the trademark is recognized and the book is gone in 24 hours. But for a book like this, they don't care. And it's frustrating. I did buy 2 of the books. One is 80 pages, one is 76. The 80-page book has 250 recipes. and they're junk recipes. And I know in other areas we're a dominant supplier of home preserving books, and the home preserving books in those that are knockoffs, that are junk books, the recipes are frequently unsafe. So if you buy it, you follow one of those recipes, you could end up in hospital. And that's frightening, and we're talking about a tiny niche relative to what Amazon sells. And the only suggestion I can give you, and I see I have 20 seconds to go, is to talk about that, the value of creativity, to talk about the importance of the work that each of you is doing as a creator, as an innovator, as somebody who's going out and working really hard to share interesting and unusual ideas. Because that's what keeps the world going. And I was having a discussion with, sorry, I've forgotten his name, the gentleman from India and Cordon Bleu, at lunch a couple days ago, and we got into it, an intense discussion about how there is a significant diminishment of curiosity. And in the United States, if you follow it closely enough, which I'm sure you do, they're cutting money for research that funds health, that funds science, that funds the things that are essential to the future of our civilization, and that has created incredible wealth in the United States over the last 75 years. So I don't mean to suggest that books are a cure, although some of the books that have been talked about are cures. We're doing a book on brain health with Mai Lee, and her book really can make a difference in lives. And anyway, that's the end of my speech.